Creating forms is a key job of a web developer. Whether or not that's a login form, settings page, or any other form where we're trying to collect data from our user, the ability to get that data, validate that data, and use that data in some meaningful way is super important. In Vue.js, there are lots of ways you can do that. Vue comes with a lot of built-in abilities to be able to manage form state, but there are also a whole host of third-party form libraries. And I've struggled to know what the best way is to create a form. So I thought I'd create a short series of videos to answer that question. Here are some form libraries that I've found that I want to try. And in this video, I'm going to create a form just using Vue with no third-party dependencies. And in follow-up videos, I'll take these form libraries one at a time and build the same form. Trying to answer the question, is it worth it? Is it worth adding a dependency? Is it worth using these third-party libraries? And if it is, why? And what's the difference between them? Sound good? Let's dive in. So the first thing we'll do is we'll create a new project with Vue. We'll do it in this directory. We'll use Vue with TypeScript and we'll npm install. Now I said I wasn't going to use any third-party dependencies, but the one thing I am going to use is Tailwind. So I'm going to set that up. So I'll npm install as a development dependency, Tailwind, CSS, post CSS, and auto prefixer. I'll npx Tailwind CSS init. And then I'll open this up in my code editor. So we've got a very simple Vue application. npm run dev to get it up and running. So I'll need to add my imports for Tailwind. So I'll remove everything in here. And just to check, I'll add a paragraph with a class of text red 100. This should be red. I've added this line to my Tailwind config, which is going to search for Tailwind classes in the base index.html file and any file in my source directory that is a Vue.js, TS, JSX, or TSX file. And I've cleared out my app.vue, get rid of all of this. So I've got this red text. And if I just make it darker red, awesome. I'm using the composition API, so I've got my script set up here, which will allow me to declare variables and use those within my template. So let's build our form. So I'm going to give my container some styles, give it some padding, give it a max width, center it in the x-axis, give it a background of white, some rounded corners, shadow, box shadow, and then just have everything centered well and spaced reasonably. There's nothing in it just at the moment, but here's where our form is going to appear. Let's create our form using a normal HTML form element. And for now, put a div, and inside this div we'll have a label. We'll say it to be name, give an input of type text. Okay, so there is a label, there is a form element here. It's hard to see, so we're going to do some styling. So let's sort out that. So give this a margin bottom of 6. My label, I'm going to say it's for name, which is going to match something that has an ID of name, which will allow a screen reader to be able to use it effectively. I'm going to give it block, which will mean that it takes up its own space. So it's text to gray 700. Maybe some small text. Make it bold. And give it some margin bottom. So my input, I'm going to give a whole load of classes to as well. I'll give it shadow. Give it appearance none. Give it a border, which is rounded. Give full width, so it takes up its space. Give it some padding on the bottom. Padding on the x-axis. Make it Let's color a bit darker. Give it a focus of outline none and a focus of shadow outline. So I have a first form element. I'm going to add in a submit button. So it's also going to have a class of flex and justify content because I want the submit button to be right in the center. It's going to be a button that's going to say submit. Let's give it some styling. Give it a background of blue. Give it a hover where we'll make the blue a bit darker. White text. What I'd like to do is when I press the submit button, I'd like the form value to appear in the console. Okay, so my script tag, I'm going to import ref from Vue, which is going to allow me to create stateful variables. I'm going to have my values. I'm going to have my form values to be a ref of an object. In this case, it's going to start with name. And its default value is going to be empty string. In my input, I'm going to vmodel this to form.name. So as I type in here, this form is keeping up to date. And how can I prove that? Well, when I press submit, I want this form to submit. So when I press the submit button, I can make this have a type of submit, but a button inside of a form will default to be a type of submit, so it doesn't make much difference. When I press the submit button, what should happen is the submit event for the form will be triggered. So at submit, I want it to run in some function. Maybe call it handle submit. So we'll create that function handle submit. And at that point, we'll just console log our form.value. Okay, so I'll type in my name, which is Kevin. I'll press submit. Oh, that's interesting. So what's happening is when I submit the form, a form submit in the web will refresh the page. In React, I'd handle that by doing e.prevent_default. With Vue, some events have modifiers, like the submit event, and .prevent will do the same thing. So I'll try Kevin, hit submit, we get this proxy object for the name of Kevin. Amazing. Okay. So far so good. We've got a ref value. We have this form. I'm not entirely impressed with the padding bottom there. Maybe padding Y too. Yeah, okay. It looks a bit better now. What I haven't done is I haven't got any error handling. So what if someone submitted this form without adding a name? So let's create another ref object, called errors. We'll have it mapped to name. I'm just going to start at null. Inside my handle submit, I'm going to say if form.name.value equals empty string, then I want to say errors.name.value should say you need to provide a name. Otherwise, it should be null. Oh, other way around. Now I'm getting a type error here that's saying this name should be null, which is what it was instantiated for. So I'll just use a generic to say everything in here is going to be a record. It's going to have a string as the key and null or a string as the value. Once I get rid of that typing error there. And again, I've got that round the wrong way, form.value.name. Okay. So we need to now display the error. So I'm going to put it below the input bar. And I'll put a paragraph. And I'll say this is vif errors dot name. And we'll put in errors dot name. And we should add some styling. Just make it red. Let's make it a bit small. Let's make it italic. Okay, need to provide name. If I do, then that's there. Awesome. So let's see what we need to do to add a second field. Let's add email. So I'll just copy this all down. This should be for email. Email. If I set this to type email, then I'll get some form validation going on, which would be great. This should say email. This should be vmodeled to form.email. And this should be an error of email and email. Oh, capital E for email. Alrighty, so let's add here. Email starts an empty string. Email starts as a null. Let's check it. Now, because I've set the type of email, if I try to submit this, I get web validation. I get the browser validation of saying, oops, this isn't an email. So that's the only thing I'm doing to get that is by setting the type to email. So I'll set this to kevincunningham.co.uk, submit. Okay. I have no validation for this because I've used a web validation. Maybe I would have a check to see whether or not that user already existed or some other thing on the back end to be able to update that. I'll do one more text field to do a password field. So let me just replace the word email with password. Let's set that to a capital P. So far, so good. Nice thing about password fields is that they are masked by default when we're typing in. Need to set up password here and password here. And for password, maybe we want to say it should be of at least length 6. So if form.value.password.length is less than 6, we will set the name of errors.value.password to say your password should be at least 6 characters. Otherwise, we'll set it back to null. Okay, so let's try Kevin, email, password. Oh, your password be at least 6 characters. Okay, so let's make it 6 characters. And it's working. Okay, so we've got some of these basic form elements. The next thing I want to set up is a set of radio buttons. I got a Steam Deck recently, which I'm very excited about. So I'm going to find out what people's favorite consoles are. So again, I'll set this as a class of margin bottom 6. I'll set my label. Again, I'll just use this. Copy this. And this is going to be for our favorite console. Favorite console. And actually, I'm going to put the error beside the label for this because I'm going to have a series of radio buttons. So it makes sense for this to be here. So favorite console. Favorite console. So I create a div to hold my radio buttons. I create a label for the first one. Give the class of inline flex, item center. And I'll say inside of the label, I'll put my input. Value of vModel and favorite console. That looks good. maybe I'll be more generic and say PlayStation. Okay, so PlayStation, Xbox. Do the same for the other. So set the height and width. Do one more for the Steam Deck. Just because that's what I'm playing at the moment and everyone should be playing it. So this should say, so it'd be PlayStation, Xbox, and Steam. Alrighty, so same thing as up here. So favorite console, could start with an empty string, and if it has an error, start at null. Okay, let's just check. Cool. Alrighty. So we had to style the radio buttons a bit. We had to set up the padding, to get the label with the inputs. We give the V model to the same property, so they'll overwrite depending on which one is selected. Seems good. So there are two more field types I'd like to look at. One is a select and one is checkboxes. Okay, so let's do that. So I'll start off just with my MB6. Oops. And this is going to be a social media selector. So we'll call it a label for social media. And we'll use the same styling we've been doing already to keep that consistent. And favorite social channel. So we'll create a select here. Its ID again should match the label. We'll vmodel on form.social media, and we'll put our options in. Oh, we want to style it, so let's give it some style as well. Give it a shadow, border, make it rounded, pick up the full width, give it some padding. Okay, so looks good. Now we just need to give it some options. So we'll say option, value, select a platform. Let's see what our Copilot says. Facebook, I guess we want Twitter. What else Copilot? Insta, yeah. Mastodon. Oh, TikTok. We're going to do Mastodon as well. Sounds good. We don't have our error message, so again, I think I'll put that here. So let's go grab that VF here. So this should be social media. Alrighty, let's go add them to our form. TikTok. I'm not liking padding and margin bottom. Padding bottom too. Let's just change this to padding Y2. There we go. Okay, seems to be coming through. We probably would want them to select something. So we'd say if social media is an empty string, we want to say you should select your favorite platform. Just for social media, that's a change. So we've got text fields, we have radio buttons, we've got a drop down. The last one I want to look at is checkboxes. Maybe we have some interests outside of away from tech. So class MB4, it's going to copy the same label and error label. So let's call this interests. And this is going to look quite similar to our radio buttons. Let's just copy this down. It's going to be of type checkbox though. This would be form checkbox. And interests. I will say sport. Just generic sport apparently. That's fine. Oh, the value should also be sport. And TTRPG. TTRPG. Tabletop role-playing games, and maybe 2 more. Music. And movie. Alrighty, looks good. Let's collect them. So this time I want the interests to be an empty array, because there could be more than one. Set that to null. I just select 2 of them. Oh. See movies and TTRPG, brilliant. Get rid of that one. Movies, great. And then again, we could put some error handling. We say you have to select something. So we'd say interest. You should select at least 1 interest. And so how do we check that? We'd say if the length of the array equals 0. So you should select at least 1 interest. We haven't created any submit logic, but we could do right here. So we'd have a fetch request where we'd post the data to a third-party API, or we'd use some other library, but that's being handled in this handle submit function. All of our validation is being done before we do that. We're still logging. We probably would exit early if we wanted to. But yeah, that's ready to go. So we have a pretty decent looking form with some error handling, some complexity with different form types, and we're doing something with the data. Some people will hate me for using Tailwind. I don't mind it. I quite like it. It helps me think it through. There's a lot of repetition here. I probably should have abstracted it away. So sorry for that. But what do you think? Creating form in Vue seems okay. There seems a lot of repetition. There's things I need to be aware of, how different form elements are styled, and different things are going on. But it seems like it's not too bad. So what do you think? Should we just not bother? Should we just keep building forms in Vue and not look at third-party libraries at all? Well, I'd like to see what the fuss is about. I'd like to see the benefits that they offer and see if it's worth the time and effort to learn them. Hope you'll join me next time as we look at that. Thanks for being here, and I'll hopefully see you again soon.